Everybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just real quick, the two patients you were mentioning, they were ANA negative?
A&E negative.
Okay, and that doesn't happen that often, right?
No, I think it's less than about 5%. And matter of fact, a lot of people don't even believe in A&A negative.
Right.
But actually, it turns out that that A&A was actually in the kidney. And this is that because that's where we found. That's how we found the diagnosis, though, too. Because it actually not the A&A, it was the double-stranded DNA that was in the kidney, and it's basically the antibody that formed against the nucleus of the cell. And that's basically how you made the diagnosis. When you get an antibody against the nucleus of the cell, that's all that is. It's our anti-nuclear antibody. And this makes the diagnosis.
I have a question. You mentioned Epstein-Barr and so
Yes.
type of association. Is there any association to mononucleosis?
Actually, I didn't see anything in the literature about mononucleosis, but I would expect it to be the same thing because it's a mononucleosis is actually also against the DNA of the cell too. These are DNA viruses, and so that once they get basically when a virus gets into the cell, whether it be an RNA virus or a DNA virus, once it affects the nucleus of that cell becomes and starts producing materials that are abnormal. And so your body, with these T regulatory cells, your B cells and macrophages, they say we're gonna get rid of that cell, right? And so that if we kill that cell that you need, and if I should say that affected cell that you don't need, and it resembles the cells that are normal, then you may also start reacting against normal cells. That's basically what we think is the mechanism that happens here.
Recently, I was going to the immunologist and I'm getting IVIG treatment
Yes.
because I'm missing the I and the M,
Okay.
G, and I did not have that problem before with the lupus. And so I was wondering how directly would the lupus cause something like that to happen?
I mean, to have antibody deficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically that I'm not sure what the mechanism in you is, but one of the things that we know that these B cells start making antibodies, and those B cells, once they become mature, they kind of become plasma cells, which tend to hang around longer, and they tend to produce the same antibody all the time. But now, if you have a deficiency in terms of your those cells' ability to make those antibodies, then that could probably do that same cause that common variable immune deficiency disorder is probably what you call it. And so that's one of the things we can see that maybe lupus may have had something to do with it. But actually, it also turns out that sometimes giving patients with lupus these antibodies in terms of IVIG, it actually may help to neutralize these floating antibodies that are normal, that are abnormal. And so that there's something called a prozone effect. It is that basically you have too few antibodies to meet the antigen response, then your body kind of ignores that antigen. Then if you got the right amount of antibody and the right amount of antigen, then they can really try to fight what's going on. But if you got too many antibodies and overwhelms the amount of antigen that you have, that also can neutralize the body's effect on that organism. So what generally we do is that they're giving people a lot of antibodies to try to replace what they're missing. We also want to give so many antibodies that whatever else is going on just don't make any sense anymore. So it just overwhelms everything. And that's one of the things that we do with these different chemicals that we use, unless we give you so much of that antibody that your body kind of just those antigens just overwhelmed by that. Those white cells just overwhelmed by that, so it kind of limits their function. Or we give patients IVIG is the same idea. We give patients that cyclophosphamide, which basically tries to reduce the amount of antibodies that you make and kill many of those, and sometimes too many of those white blood cells that are causing this problem. So sometimes it's tricky trying to figure out how much to give and how often to give it sometimes. So we still haven't got the bugs worked out. We're still in that yellow car picture, but I want to get to the moon picture, the space rocket picture.
You mentioned the C1q antibody was
Not antibody, protein.
or protein seems to be very it was important in your speech.
Yes.
Your talk. Is that something you test regularly, or
But
is
not,
it?
not regularly. We do test it sometimes. And I test it more than patients that come in that you're suspected to have lupus, but they have hives. They get that for like allergic type of, because we know that sometimes lupus presents that way too. And then these are the ones that tend to be the more classic ones to have that deficiency, that C1q esterase deficiency. And it can be either a development, I mean, you developed it, you were normal before, now you're deficient. And it can also be hereditary. And the hereditary forms, and these patients, they don't necessarily have lupus, but they have a feature that look like lupus. They may have some of the rashes, they may have some of that Raynaud's phenomena that goes on, they may have some of the lung involvement that can go on. So this is so it's one of those that may not be lupus, but it can look so much like lupus that we end up treating it like lupus anyway. So.
Do you see a lot of like yeast infections and folliculitis in lupus patients?
Actually, yes. This is that the folliculitis in particular, and I think that some of these side effects is not necessarily related to the lupus directly. It's sometimes related to the medicine we treated with, because especially oral yeast infections, under the breath yeast infections, the private area infections. Yeah, we see it quite a bit actually. It causes a lot of it too. So.
Is vasculitis a common symptom for lupus?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a common symptom, but I bet it happens more often than we realize, though. Because I think we're trying to explain that these cells are actually traveling right through your bloodstream. And it depends on where they land, what problem they cause. And so if it lands in the lungs, maybe you've got inflammation of blood vessels in the lung. It definitely happens in the kidney, no question about that in the kidney. And this is that you may get the same thing in the lining or the muscle, the lining that goes around your heart or the muscle of the heart. It can actually be affected by this too. So I bet it happens more than we realize. But the fortunate thing is that many times the treatment that we're using for, say if you got lung involvement, we try to treat that lung involvement, we probably also treating whatever vasculitis is there as well. The other place that it happens a lot that's been recognized is in the eye. That's another place we see the vasculitis and lupus.
I'm just curious, can you just touch on why is it the sun is our enemy?
Well, actually, I didn't go too much into detail about it, but the sun is your friend and your enemy. This is that's probably your friend of me, I guess you want to call it. But this is because we need the sun for the vitamin D. It actually turns out that vitamin D, 25-hydroxy vitamin D and 125-dihydroxy vitamin D, help to reduce or downregulate those called toll receptors. Toll receptor 7 and toll receptor 19, which is that, and these are those old holes in the wall of your cells that could either allow things to come in or the bad things to get out that cause inflammation. So vitamin D actually tends to downregulate that, so you don't have as many of those toll receptors to allow those chemicals to be released into the bloodstream, which is good part. But then it also turns out that ultraviolet light actually causes something called a keratinocyte, which is the cells in your skin that actually start to release, or I mean, I should say the DNA in those cells become abnormal. And then those cells, when your DNA, when your cells going to messenger RNA, your transfer RNA, all that kind of group, you're trying to remember my biology. But it says that you start to try to transcribe that, so you start making new making new DNA that go out into your bloodstream. And then that DNA in that bloodstream does not, I should say the cells that the DNA are made in the bloodstream are not just limited to your skin. So they can actually pass out and go to any other part of your body too. So that ultraviolet light causes abnormalities in the skin in terms of the DNA of the skin, in particular keratinocytes. So that's why we like our sunscreen for that reason. And then since we don't get the vitamin D that way, or at least you're inhibiting a lot of the absorption of vitamin D, so we have to supplement it another way by the pills. Matter of fact, vitamin D is actually being used in some places to actually treat rheumatoid arthritis too for the same problem. So these are toll receptors.
So I do have one more. There's a lot of seasoned people in the room and a lot of new people in the room.
Okay.
And in a minute, what would you say the definition of lupus is?
Well, lupus, I'll say is that, now that's, I did a whole lot of talking to say that we don't know what in the world it is, but it's that basically know it's an immune system problem that can affect you in various ways. And that immune system problem is related to the malfunction of either the cellular, it's called the innate system, the innate immune system, which is the one that works right away. That's the complement system, your NK cell, your macrophages, and also that the humoral immune system or the adaptive immune system is the ones with the antibodies. We think that that is a malfunction either or both of those systems, and that causes your body to fight against itself. All right, thank you very much.